Hey guys. All right, so we are going to start talking about World War II this week. This week we're going to focus on more of the fighting, and then next week we're going to focus on the Holocaust. So World War II lasted from 1939 to 1945, and today we're just going to talk about the start of the war and what caused it. But before we do that, since I know you're all sitting at home and you're probably bored and thinking, what can I do? I have movie suggestions. Okay, so World War II movies you need to see. Fury, really good. Saving Private Ryan, this is a classic. I plan to show you like a 20-minute clip from this movie, but I can't do that now. But you should watch it. This one, which I'm not gonna say the name of, but it's really funny. It's not accurate at all, but it's really funny. We have Dunkirk, which came out the other year, Darkest Hour, Pearl Harbor. I was going to show you a 30-minute clip from this movie, but I can't do that anymore. But it's really neat because you get to see the attack on Pearl Harbor. That's the best part of the movie. And it's the part I was going to show you. We have Red Tails, which is about the Tuskegee, I always say it wrong, Airmen, which is like an all-black unit of pilots. Hacksaw Ridge, which is good. Then you have my favorite movie, something you should all see. It is hilarious, Jojo Rabbit. So good. You need to see this. I was going to show you this movie in class, like the entire movie. But of course, now I can't. So you should watch it on your own because it is so good. Miniseries you should see. Band of Brothers. My favorite show. I watch it a few times every year. It's 10 episodes. Both of these are on HBO. Need to watch them. Especially Band of Brothers. Okay. Movies about the Holocaust. So we have Defiance, which is about Jews who actually hide in the forest and then they attack the Germans throughout the war. Schindler's List, which is very good, very sad, very long. And The Pianist, which is also really good. So, just keep that in mind when you're bored at home. I got a list of movies for you, and I will be posting the movies on Google Classroom for you to go back and see. So you should do it. Okay, so quick information about the war. So World War II was a lot more expensive than World War I. It cost 10 times what World War I cost, and it also had a lot more casualties. So there were 50 million people who died. You had 11 million people who died in the Holocaust, and then you had 21 million Russians who died. Just like in World War I, the Russian soldiers are the country with the most casualties. So the Russians always kind of get the raw end of the deal in wars. All right, but now we're going to get to basics. Okay, so who fought? First, we have the Axis powers, and these were considered to be the bad guys. So you have Germany, and Hitler was in charge, obviously, which you should all know. Italy, and they were led by Benito Mussolini. And then you have Japan, that was led by Tojo. Oh, you can't see his picture because my picture's right there. So he was the military leader of Japan. So he was in control of Japan. And then we have Allied powers. So we have France, and the French leader at this time was Charles de Gaulle. We have Great Britain, who was led by Winston Churchill. The Soviet Union, who was led by Joseph Stalin. And Stalin was a name that he gave himself once he came to power. It means man of steel. And he was almost just as bad as Hitler. He was not a good guy. Originally, he had a deal with Hitler that they would kind of take over together, but then Hitler got a little cocky, and Stalin didn't like that. But Stalin was an awful human being too. Like, he killed millions and millions of people while he was in power, sent them to prison camps, all this stuff. He was awful too. So just because he's on our side in this does not mean he was a good guy. He was not. And then finally, eventually, the U.S., when we joined the war with FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt. Okay. And here we have Winston Churchill, FDR, and Joseph Stalin. Charles de Gaulle is not in this picture because shortly after the war started, France ended up having to surrender, and so he's like, technically doesn't count. Okay, so what caused World War II? First is the Treaty of Versailles. So the Treaty of Versailles said Germany had to take all responsibility for starting World War I. Because of that, they had to pay a ton of money to the Allies in war reparations. So pay all this money making up for the damage they caused. So they ended up having to pay what is today about $57 trillion, which is a ton. And while they're in debt from the war, the Great Depression comes about. And the German currency, the Reichsmark, basically becomes useless. It is worth almost nothing. And so in the pictures here, you see people there burning their money because that is more useful for them than actually going out and selling it. You can look up you can look up Germans with wheelbarrows filled high with money, and all that money in the wheelbarrow could only get them maybe like one loaf of bread, if that. So the German money becomes useless, and Germany is in a big economic downturn. Okay. And also as part of the Treaty of Versailles, they divided up Germany, so they took land away from Germany. Germany used to be huge, and they took all that land away from Germany. And Germany is upset about this. They want their land back. So it says, now, gents, which portion am I to carve for you? So you have the leader of England. He's literally carving up the pig that is Germany. All right. Second cause is the Great Depression. So the German people are looking for a leader to bring them back to glory. And this is when Hitler comes to power. He comes to power in the 1930s, and he promises he's going to fix everything. He promises he's going to get rid of the Treaty of Versailles. He's going to get them out of the Great Depression. He's going to bring back jobs. So all the stuff they want to hear, he is promising them. And he's doing it. It's not just that he's promising these things and then nothing ever happens. He is doing it. And that is what the German people like about him. He is the one who they think is going to help them. Now, Hitler blames a lot of minorities for these economic problems, like Jews and homosexuals and gypsies and foreigners and communists and the mentally ill. So he says, they're the reason we lost World War I. They're the cause of all this. They're really traitors. Now, the German people know that he's anti-Semitic, which means he doesn't like Jews. But they vote for him in spite of this. And that's one thing a lot of people get kind of wrong. A lot of people think, well, the German people voted for Hitler because they also hated Jews. No, they viewed this as a flaw of his. They viewed this as a character flaw. Like, yeah, we know he's a little crazy, about the Jews, but he's doing all this great stuff for us, so we can vote for him in spite of that. So they knew he was anti-Semitic. They did not vote for him because of that. They voted for him in spite of that. So when he first came to power, that was viewed as a character flaw of his. So one thing to keep in mind. All right. Third cause of World War II is policy of appeasement. So when you appease someone, you are giving them what they want in order to avoid more conflict. So when my sister and I fight, I usually try and appease her because if I don't, she'll just yell more. So appeasement is when you give dictators what they want in order to avoid conflict. And Britain and France, they start giving Germany what Hitler wants because they think, we don't want to cause any more wars or problems. It's just this one little thing he wants. But it's not just one little thing he wants. He keeps wanting more and more and more. So he starts to rearm Germany, starts to build up their military again, even though this is completely against the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles says you cannot do this. Well, he starts to do it. And France and England are like, it's understandable. I mean, what country doesn't need a military? That's okay. And then he starts to take back land from other nations, land that they lost from World War I. And England and France are once again like, it was their land before we took it. We can't really blame them for that. It's okay. So England and France tried to appease Germany. And some people even admired Hitler in other countries because they thought, he seems to be getting Germany on the right track. So right here, this is Germany in 1933, this purple. Hitler starts going over to this side. So he takes over Austria first, and then he wants to take over what was Czechoslovakia, and then he wants to take over Poland. And Poland is where we run into some issues. Now, the Soviet Union also wants to take over Poland. So Hitler and Stalin agree, you know what? We'll meet in the middle. We'll both take over Poland because that's just what we should do. And this shows Hitler, he's literally walking over. It says leaders of democracy right here. He's just walking over them because they're just bowing down and letting him do whatever he wants. So, Germany invades Poland on September 1st, 1939, starting the war. And then the Soviet Union comes in from the side and starts invading Poland too. Now, this is what causes the war because England had a treaty with Poland, and once Poland went to war, England had to join also. Now, the day he chose to invade, September 1st, 1939, was an important day. It was the day schools were supposed to start back in Poland, and lots of people had just gotten back from vacation, from their summer vacations, the day before. So train stations were packed, everyone was ready to start school, and then Germany invades, and they don't. They just don't start school. So that officially starts the war. But he waited until most people were back in the country to start the war. And we are going to stop here. Oh. It says, war begins, Nazi planes bomb Polish cities, Poland asks Britain for help, Italy uncertain of her course. So at the start of the war, Italy's not entirely sure which side they're going to join. Eventually, not really eventually, shortly after, they do join the Germans. Okay, so we are going to stop here. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the first few years of the war. All right, so I will see you later.